where people are insisting on only organic foods and foods that are used, are grown using organic matter. And therefore, part of what this bill is speaking to are these global dynamics in agricultural trade to ensure that we align ourselves and our country's agricultural sector with the changing world or the changes that are there in the world. And therefore, this bill, Honorable Speaker, equally repeals the act, that old act, to align with the current constitution and give clear roles to both levels of the government in the sector, because when we enacted the first Act of Parliament in 1937, there was one unitary national government. Now we have two levels of government, the national and the county governments, and you are aware that the agriculture as a function of government has since been devolved to our county governments. And therefore, this bill seeks to ensure that we have a harmonized way of relations, or there is a harmonization of relations between the two levels of government. And we have removed the historic regulatory duplication and friction that existed between our two levels of government. Therefore, the national government is being given its own mandate in ensuring that we retain border surveillance and international policy decisions. But then when it comes to managing of local plant clinics, building farmers' capacity, execution of on-ground pest management, that has been set aside to be done by the county governments, Honorable Speaker. But just pointing out the key objective of this bill, Honorable Speaker, it touches also on the management of pests. And many of us, because as I said, being an agro-based economy, many of us come from farming communities. And even if you are from Kikuyu like myself, where there isn't much food being produced on large scale, we have subsistence farmers who are growing crops. And we are all aware that invasive pests destroy close to 40% of our food crops globally every year. That all the food produced in the world, 40% of it goes to waste because of pests. And therefore, that makes this legislative proposal an urgent priority for our country to ensure that we have proper pest management control. And when I spoke about the global trade dynamics in agriculture, that also speaks to how do we manage our pests, Honorable Speaker. Because there are certain pesticides that we could use that then makes our food crops and our plants unable to access other markets in the globe. And therefore, we must ensure that even the pests that we are using, we train our farmers, and that's why I said even the two levels of government will have the international standards and international policy and border surveillance to ensure that people are not bringing in pests into our country using plants. That is why KEFIS is established to make sure that they control the kind of plants that come into our country, how we do disease surveillance and pest control, and also to ensure, Honorable Speaker, there is also surveillance of what pesticides are coming into our country and farmers are using. And that is why I say there is now a clear dichotomy of what will be the role of the national government in terms of formulating policy, aligning our policy with the international standards and international policies, border surveillance, whereas we leave the county governments to be the ones who are legally empowered to manage local plant clinics, build farmer capacity in terms of being able to educate our farmers to know what pesticides to use. If you are using organic matter in growing your crops, what organic matter can you use that will also not make sure that your food crops are able to access markets globally, not just locally. And also, of course, they will be the ones in the county governments being able to execute the on-ground pest management, because they are the ones who have extension officers on the ground. Honorable Speaker, the key objective of this bill, therefore, is to establish a very clear and comprehensive legal and regulatory framework, or an institutional framework, that will handle modern agricultural challenges. And specifically, the bill targets to do a number of things. One is to prevent the introduction or the establishment and spread of destructive plant pests in Kenya. As I said, it is possible that if we do not manage this space, people can introduce very destructive pests. And Honorable Speaker, not just pests, but also plants. Remember the case of the Madenge plant, which has made the people of Baringo and other areas, including northern Kenya, the hyacinth in the Lake Victoria, Lake Naivasha region, and I think also Lake Turkana, they suffered from the hyacinth. These are things that can come into our country and become a disadvantage to our food production cycle. And therefore, part of the targets of this bill, or part of the key objective of this bill, is to ensure that we have proper mechanisms on the introduction, management, and establishment of destructive plant pests in the country. Two, it also aims to fully institutionalize and facilitate safe international and local trade in plants and plant products. Honorable Speaker, you know, you've seen in many jurisdictions when you are walking out of your aircraft to the terminals, you are told to declare what you are carrying. And part of the things you are asked to declare are whether you are carrying any plants or seeds. And we want to ensure that even in our own country, Honorable Speaker, because I have not seen that at JKIA, we will now have a legal framework that will ensure that people are able to declare, so that even if it's a flower you are coming with from outside, you go to Tokyo and you find a beautiful looking flower, or another capital city, and you want to carry its seeds or that plant into the country, we must be sure that you have approval from KEFIS. Honorable Speaker, this bill also seeks to formally align Kenya with global standards, as I said, by giving full effect to the International Plant Protection Convention, which we are a signatory to, and therefore we will use this bill to give effect or formally align our country to the global standards that we are signatories to, like that International Plant Protection Convention. The bill further seeks to effectively manage transboundary and migratory pests that threaten national food security. You remember, Honorable Speaker, like 4 years ago or so, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, in 2020 or 2019, there was an invasion of locusts. And I remember the then Minister for Agriculture, I think it was Peter Munya, telling people to photograph pests, the locusts, and send the photos to the ministry. Because we lacked that effective transboundary and migratory pest management system. Therefore, we want to create that mechanism so that the current Minister for Agriculture, should there be an invasion from any of our neighboring countries or from one country to the other, will not stand up to tell us, you take photos of locusts and send to the ministry, then we'll be able to establish whether it is a harmful one or the unharmful one. We will have a system now where you are able to manage this transboundary migration of any harmful pests, so that you're able to track them and know if there is an invasion of a harmful pest that would diminish our food crops or our plants, you arrest it in time. The bill also establishes a very comprehensive institutional framework that coordinates plant protection across both levels of government. As I said, this is a bill that is dealing with a matter that touches on devolved levels of government, and therefore, even upon passage in this House, we expect that it will go to the other House. Clause 7 and 8 of the bill, Honorable Speaker, designates the Kenya Plant Health Inspectorate Service, KEFIS, that I had referred to, as a national plant protection organization. And by formalizing KEFIS, Honorable Speaker, through this bill as our global inquiry and contact point, the bill ensures that the Kenyan agricultural exports command unmatched regulatory and trust across international markets. And this is very important, Honorable Speaker, because I said people out there who are sensitive to the kind of plants or food crops they are eating want to be certain that if I get tea from Murarandia Tea Factory in Muranga, that tea is grown in line with the international and global standards in terms of the pest control mechanisms that have been applied on the plants, in terms of whether people want organic tea, organically grown tea, that if KEFIS has certified that, KEFIS now is our reference point for this, and it becomes a global inquiry and contact point for our country, that any person out there can be confident that what has been certified by KEFIS is in line with the international standards set out, and therefore this further strengthens our strength in the global agricultural markets, and we'll be able to have our food crops, our cash crops being able to access our international markets without having any non-tariff trade barriers, because people are not certain whether you adhere to international conventions on pest control, how you manage your plants. Honorable Speaker, the other thing I think I could touch on is clause 11 to 14 that creates the specialized Kenya Technical Committee on biological articles and control agents to aggressively fast-track the risk analysis and registration of eco-friendly biofertilizers and organic soil conditioners. Because, Honorable Speaker, again, if we lack a system where we have such a technical committee that is dealing with biological articles and control agents, it is possible, and we have no system of doing risk analysis and registration of eco-friendly biofertilizers, organic soil conditioners. We could find manufacturers of some of these biofertilizers and organic soil conditioners producing things that may be harmful, 1, to our plants, 2, to our health, or 3, to our soil, and make our country or our soils less productive. And the only way to safeguard that is to make sure that we have a technical committee of biotech specialists who will be able to analyze whatever is coming into our country to ensure that the biofertilizers or whether it is soil conditioners that we are using, first, are not harmful to ourselves, they are not harmful to our soils, they are not harmful to our plants, and they will not in any way interfere with the ecological balance of our agricultural productive areas or our soils, Honorable Speaker, because again, biological warfare in today's world is real. And you may find people who don't mean well for you, sending you bioagents or things that will come and spoil your soils, or even spoil the variety of plants that we are using as food crops. Honorable Speaker, I spoke about border surveillance and enforcement powers that I don't need to belabor, because that, again, as I said in the bill, has been designated to our national government, and the roles of the county government are also clearly stipulated. Honorable Speaker, clause 44.1 and 45.1 collectively establishes the dedicated national and county plant health emergency response committees to provide a highly synchronized, swift crisis management structure where biosecurity breaches occur. Because, Honorable Speaker, and case in point is that issue of locusts. This had nothing to do with biosecurity. It was just an invasive pest. But you remember those 4 or 5 years ago, there was absolutely no coordination between the county governments in Isiolo, in Marsabit, I think also parts of Laikipia, where this invasive pest came from, and the national government. That is why you had the minister then telling members of the public to take photos of the locusts. But if there was a coordinated way of working between the two levels of government, and that is what this bill is seeking to do in clause 44.1 and 45.1, that you have a coordinated mechanism between the national and the county plant health emergency response committees, such that if there is any biosecurity danger anywhere within our country, the county government at the local level is able to arrest that, and they're able to coordinate with the national institutions to be able to arrest things before they become catastrophic to our food security or our food basket. Honorable Speaker, as I said, this bill is very detailed. It's not one among the bills that people can come here to contribute to without having read. You know, the finance bill, Honorable Speaker, is very easy for people to contribute to, because they can come and say all manner of things without reading the bill, without ascertaining what they have had out there is in the bill. That is why you had a very serious leader, or a leader who ought to be a very serious leader in this country, purport that the finance bill had a clause that was converting all leasehold land. Imagine including my small piece of land that is freehold. He purported that it was going to be converted into leasehold. And you know, I pitied my good friend and landed friend, because he's a senior counsel, he's a lawyer, he's a former vice president, he purports to be a presidential candidate, But when you are a presidential candidate, leave alone a presidential candidate, when you aspire to be anything, anywhere, or to lead anyone, anywhere, you must have your facts on your fingertips. And all it takes is simple reading, Honorable Speaker. This bill is very massive, as I said, 70 plus clauses. The finance bill was only 57 clauses. Only 57. I felt very embarrassed, Honorable Speaker, yesterday when I sat here and listened to people speak about issues that were not in the finance bill. I have seen the same people misinforming members of the public in a press conference out here, telling people things that are not in the finance bill. I am waiting when the House Business schedules the committee of the whole House to see how these shameless people will treat Kenyans. Kenyans are more intelligent now, Honorable Speaker. Kenyans know that some years back they were being misled to believe that when a bill goes through second reading, is a fait accompli, that matter has been closed. Kenyans were made to believe that when you finish second reading of a bill, you don't need to amend. That is why we are being told, reject the entire bill, don't amend. But now we must continuously educate Kenyans, Honorable Speaker, to know that when we debate a bill like this in second reading, we are speaking to the pros and cons of what is contained in the bill. But the committee has also done extensive stakeholder engagement. And if you read the committee's report, you see they engage with the State Department for Agriculture, with KEFIS, with industry players, including manufacturers of our agro products, agro-based, those biofertilizers, soil conditioners. They have engaged with research institutions, serious research institutions like CARO. They have engaged with people like Kenya Seed, who are producing seed, and other seed growers, private sector players, agrochemical associations, so that we inform our debate or the legislative pieces that we enact in this House with facts, with proper data, and the same goes with the finance bill. We go out to the public to listen to their views. The committee tables a report that informs our debate. And therefore, as serious legislators, as serious leaders, elected by the people to come and represent them, the best we can do is just to take 10, 20, 30 minutes of our time to go through the executive summary of the committee's report when it is tabled. To get a bill like this, Honorable Speaker, and if you turn to the back of the bill, it speaks to the memorandum of objects and reasons. So I get very ashamed, Honorable Speaker, when a member of parliament stands here and purports that in a bill like the finance bill that was reducing VAT on Mtumba from 16%, taking it to exempt, you are telling Kenyans they are taxing Mtumba. You are not telling Kenyans the truth. That Kenyans pay 16% on their Mtumba when they import it. But because it is easier and more convenient politically to speak to the gallery from the floor of parliament, you want to abuse that. You may look intelligent when you are abusing that here. But when people discover the truth, you look very foolish. And we must safeguard our integrity and the dignity of this House. Because I want to believe every member who is elected into this House is elected as among the best in the areas they come from. Therefore, you must exhibit that. When you come and tell us in the House, like the member for Kabuchai, that clause 169, what are you telling us about the people of Kabuchai? The people of Kabuchai have produced very serious scholars in this country. You can imagine a senior counsel like the Speaker of the National Assembly is from Kabuchai. Therefore, that cannot be a reflection of the people of Kabuchai. And I must apologize to the people of Kabuchai. I must apologize to the people of Kabuchai. Because they have serious leaders, serious people who can help, serious scholars who can read a bill and say this bill has 57 clauses, there is no clause 169. You know, I had the member purport that we are moving, rental income tax is being moved from 7.5 to 30% based on Schedule 3.
What's the point of your point of order?
Mr. Speaker, is a majority leader in order to use the platform to start campaigning for colleagues here by saying he's apologizing for the people who come join, which is not important, Mr. Speaker. Can he concentrate on the bill, Mr. Speaker, because we also want to contribute, but to stop trying to decampaign colleagues here in this parliament, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Honorable Speaker, you know that is not a point of order. If I wanted to decampaign Joshua Kimilu, he knows I can, and he knows what I can say about him. And if he wants me to say it, I can say it, Honorable Speaker. Because for sure, I am sure he does not know what is contained in this bill even now. That is why he's not even paying attention to what is being said. You know, Honorable Speaker, I had people being told, be in the House and call division on each and every clause. And you know, unfortunately, Honorable Speaker, when they attempted to call for division this morning, they could not even reach the numbers. These are people who are being led by more people out there than the members of parliament they are leading in here. But when you want to call for division on any of these 75 clauses of this bill, Honorable Speaker, at least do some basic research, some easy reading. Read the report. Say what members of the public have said. Align whatever you want to amend with what is being said. You know, we have very serious legislators in this House. When I see a legislator like the incoming governor for Kitui, Makali Mulu, serious legislator, who you will never see engage in superfluous things. When he moves amendments, they are based on what he has done actual research. And I say this because I worked with the Honorable Makali Mulu in the Budget and Appropriations Committee. That is why you will not see Makali Mulu engaging in the theatrics that you saw here in the morning, or in press conferences purporting there is a clause 169, rental income tax is being moved from 7.5 to 30% when it does not exist, because he knows the truth. And he's an expert, a finance expert. In another life, Honorable Speaker, if I was the president, I would favorably look at Makali Mulu as an expert. Honorable Speaker, I was saying this in conclusion because this is a very important bill. Very, very important bill. But Honorable Speaker, you will see they are not here. And members know who I'm speaking about when I say they are not here. They cannot be here because this, you cannot use it for politics. But they thought the finance bill is what you can use for politics. But this touches on the lives of the people of Kenya. Not just farmers, but even the consumers of food. Look at the prevalence of cancer in our country, Honorable Speaker. How do we ensure that we have biosecurity in terms of the conditioners that we are using for our soils, the biofertilizers that we are using, that we don't use those that are carcinogenic, Honorable Speaker, but not the carcinogenic wheelbarrows.
Biosafety.
Matters biosafety. How I wish we were more members of parliament here to contribute to this debate. I beg to move, Honorable Speaker, and I want to urge those of you who are in this House at this time. This touches on the safety of the food you eat, our food security as a country, and our health as a people, and our relations with other countries in the global agricultural trade. Therefore, I want to beg that you support and urge Kenyans to also support this bill, as I thank Kenyans in a very special manner. And allow me to do this, Speaker, because it is out of this debate. allow me to use this opportunity to thank Kenyans in a very, very special manner. Because when those in the opposition attempted to incite Kenyans against the 2026 finance bill, Kenyans have taken their time, they have cross-checked facts against what is in the bill, and even when their leaders were misleading them, I thank them because they have been able to call them out. I thank Kenyans who have called out those who came to incite them on the floor of parliament without even knowing the color of the bill, or knowing how many clauses were there, or knowing what was contained in the 57 clauses, or knowing the import of what was in the schedules. Because as I said, when Joshua Kimilu interrupted me on a point of order, the member for Kabuchai was alleging this morning that if you go to the third schedule, the only thing I see there is 30%. And he shouts, 30%! 30%! Can you imagine? Honorable Speaker. You know, I was watching that, Honorable Speaker, from my office. And I said a quiet prayer for the people of Kabuchai, that God may favor them. God may see them through, even when they have leadership like that. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I beg to move. And I want to request the very other serious expert in agriculture, serious legislator, second-term member of parliament,